We got a 10-pound super chat here from Sigmund. Question: I'm in a space that's 6.5 meters. I did a transformation calculation, whatever conversion. 21 feet by 4.5 meters, which is 14.7. So 21 by 15, let's say. Currently running the KEF 3000 SE HT 5.1 set from 2006 and love what I have. Awesome. Do I build on this by buying more secondhand, or am I missing out? He's got $5,000, wants to get a 724 setup. What do you think?
I think buy another subwoofer. He's got a 5.1.
$5,000 subwoofer.
Well, not necessarily that, but
no, he needs to get other speakers.
I think the reality. Let's see. I want to pull them up. I want to see what they look like. It depends on how well you like them.
They're like about this. Yeah, I took one apart a long time ago. Yeah, they're like satellite speakers. They come in a kit.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I like floor standing myself.
Yeah. I mean, maybe buy larger front, like mains or something. Like right center.
Oh yeah.
Maybe.
Those are
here they are. Here, I'll pull them up.
Yeah, pull those up, buddy. For sure.
What do we decide this room size is? What is the
21
by 14?
So that's a big room for satellite speakers.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So those probably.
I think your center channels
go down
struggle.
to 80 hertz. Like you're lucky if those go down to 80 hertz. I don't know how big those are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a 4-inch driver, I believe, or maybe 5, somewhere around that though.
I'm just
she's having fun over here. She's having fun.
She looks really
sure
upset.
like what models.
She does. She's not having any fun over there.
Her husband, she's staring at her husband like, wait till you go to sleep.
It looks like a Jamiroquai.
I'm gonna buy some stuff. Yeah, it is. 4.5-inch UniQ driver.
Futures.
Yeah.
So yeah, what are the specs on it? Look at her.
Let's see. She was all mad.
Look at her.
I hope that's not the frequency response.
That's like your old setup.
Yeah, right. Here we go. 70 hertz to 55,000. Okay. 65 to 55 on the center.
70 hertz?
Yeah.
Well, what's the sensitivity on that thing? Hold on. Look at the sensitivity.
88.
That sounds higher than I expect.
I mean, that's a big room and a small speaker.
Yeah. Satellite speakers are definitely better for smaller rooms.
Yeah, I would say, like if you like those a lot,
Angela.
Hang on to those, but then buy something else for the front mains, something larger. Another KEF stuff.
Those might work for your, could work for your Atmos speakers, maybe, if you need to repurpose them.
I
don't know.
Hey, Joe, what about those little ones you just unboxed?
Oh, yeah, so I have some of these.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I think it's kind of similar to what's going on with these monolith, what are these? THX compact satellite.
Mm-hmm.
So
4.5-inch concentric driver. Hey, it's almost like a KEF, right?
These do go down to 80 hertz. And this room here is 20 by 20 by 9. So pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
And, I EQ'd this with some, with my subs and all that. And, these are much lower sensitivity though. So I don't know how correct the KEF one is because these are about the same size, 4.5-inch driver. And I think it's like 81 dB sensitivity. So
Segment says he paired it with the Denon 6700 and hear a vast difference already. That's good.
By giving them more power.
So it basically my conclusion in my video that's coming up is basically that they're meant for a smaller room. You're gonna get way more out of these if your room is not so big because you're really pushing these if you're crossed over at 80 hertz, let's say, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it sounds different. I don't know how else to say it, but it really, you can tell the difference between a speaker that only goes down to 80 hertz versus some floor standing speakers that can go down to like 40 or 30 hertz and you cross them over at 80. Why? Probably because the slope is, it doesn't mean that you're not going to hear any frequencies below that. But
right. It just starts to roll off at 80. It still has to roll off, whether it's 12 dB per octave or 20 dB per octave, depends on how they made the speaker. But for the most part, it's not like it's a hard wall at 80 hertz and nothing underneath goes through. It still goes through,
So I'm trying to figure out why it sounds so different, but it's more like there's just bass authority. You know what I mean? With the larger speakers, it might be hitting the same frequency. It might even be the same SPL and all that. but for some reason it just feels different when they're coming out of bigger speakers. And so for that size room, I would say bigger speakers.
Yeah, I would too. That's a big room, I think. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the more speakers you add, you guys would know about this more than I would. The more speakers you add, I'm guessing the less output you need for each individual one to provide. But I don't know.
Well, that's another thing about the receiver. The receiver is now going to take on, higher load. You've got 5 speakers now. It probably sounds pretty great, but when you add another 8, is that right? My math right? To get 11, I don't know. No, 6. 6. Yeah, another 6. That was totally off. You're gonna have less power going all around. So that's another thing to think about. So if you have something like Joe was saying, a little bit more sensitive, that's definitely going to help. But I have a room upstairs is 23 by 17, and I have standard bookshelf speakers. I don't think yeah, and 2 15-inch subwoofers, but I don't think. I think a larger speaker would probably benefit your space. We don't know how tall the ceiling is, but if we guess it's like 8 or 9, what is that? Here's my calculator here.
Yeah. And you know what? I don't do measurements of distortion, but I bet you could measure a difference in distortion, right? So if I'm pushing this to the limit, if I have it cross over 80 hertz, the tiny speaker is going to be at the very, very edge of that limit, right? Versus the bigger speaker is probably like, yeah, you're good. It's just cruising, And I think that maybe you'd be able to perceive that a bit.
You're at 2,520 cubic feet in that room, so larger speaker would be better. I'm at 1,140 in here, and I got little speakers, and they're totally fine. But that's another 1,000 cubic feet less. So
that's a good question, Aaron. What would explain that? Why would a speaker, like a small speaker like this, that's crossed over 80 hertz, why at 80 hertz would it sound different than a floor standing speaker also crossed over at 80 hertz? Like, what are some reasons that kind of make sense?
So like if they had the same acoustic roll-off point, right? Like if the speaker itself was basically the same, I would think the one that has higher output capability is going to have more dynamic range, right? Like you can push a little bit harder and get a little bit more volume out of it. So,
yeah. And dynamics are is that
like
easy to
like that start to stop, that snap? Like we hear a snare, you hear a snare, attack. You hear a snare and you're like blink because it pops out at you, but in a good way.
Attack, not the transient,
right?
The attack,
right? The attack.
And you test
some of these YouTube influencers, audio influencers don't know the difference between it.
So you test for that, Aaron? Like what measurement would show that particular thing?
Well, I mean, I try to test for that. I mean, I don't know if it's foolproof, but one of the guys who used to design JBL's big boy speakers told me it was a good idea. So if I got his blessing, I don't really need anybody else's.
There you go.
Get that dirt off my shoulder real fast. Anyway. So I test the frequency response at like a low volume level and then another higher and then another higher. And then I basically just compare, like, does the frequency response change as I increase the volume? And if not, then you could assume that whatever, if you're listening at like 70 dB and you have like a 20 dB dynamic range or like a swing of like 20 dB, then it should play that the same, but if it's compressed, then it's not going to give you that full 20 dB. It's going to give you like maybe 10 dB or something like that. So it's not going to have that same like real life kind of sound to it. That's the best way I could think to describe it.
And very audible, would you say? Like something like that would be easily,
that like
record it and like let somebody hear that.
Right on its own, you maybe not notice it, but I think if you A/B it, like you can tell there's more. I don't know how to describe it other than just attack. Like John said.
Yeah. Interesting, because I think that I've experienced that, right? But I've never done a blind test where you don't know which speakers they are. Usually like the big speakers, like, okay, I'm expecting that type of thing from the big speaker,
right?
So what is Croson saying here? Like a car that goes max 60 versus 200, if the speed limit is 60, the car that can go 200 doesn't even sweat. Okay, yeah,
it's acceleration.
Somebody,
not velocity.
Reverend Slim said something about headroom. You got extra headroom.
Yeah.
For transient bursts to be clean, small speakers in that room would just ride the limits. Yeah.
I think it's important.
If you're interested in joining us in the after show, you can visit patreon.com/daily hi-fi. We'd love to hang out with you and get to know you better. We're going to have a lot of fun.